morning and welcome to the Ad Hoc Scrutiny Panel Residential Housing Stock Health and Safety Compliance meeting. We have a few apologies this morning from Councillor Anthony Smith, Councillor Uppal and Councillor Amanda Pinnock. I wonder if Kevin has also sent his apologies, Kevin McAllister. I wonder if we could, the panel members could introduce themselves. Linda.
Good morning, my name's Linda Summers. I'm a co-optee on the panel.
And Councillor Lee Richards.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Sulia Richards, Councillor for Newsom Ward.
And I'm Councillor Liz Mage, Chair of the panel. The minutes of the previous meeting have been circulated. Do we approve those minutes? Yes, thank you. Does anybody have any interests they wish to declare? No. And this meeting is open to the public, webcast, and the recording will be available to view after the meeting via the Council's website. We have no deputations and petitions, and we have no public questions. So we move straight to item 7, which is the gas safety and electrical safety policy reviews. So Eric, is this yourself that's introducing this report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you can see, the policy reviews are in your pack for your information. Following the last meeting of the scrutiny panel, we've made sure that these have been standardised based on the feedback that you gave us last time. So they are largely in the same format. The sections which are different, obviously applicable to each area of gas and electricity, are sections 1.3 applicable legislation and section 6 for reference. I have unfortunately noticed on page 17 of the pack, item 4.7, a rogue reference to gas, if anybody else has spotted that. We have spotted it since we've sent it through to you and made that alteration. So, but otherwise, the format and content of the documents are the same. The responsibility levels fall to the same people, other than within this pack, because it's gas and electric, it's the head of operations that's taking things forward within the responsibilities and not the building compliance people, because that falls under our head of operations and maintenance services. Other than that, I'm hoping that you will agree that they are in the same like format as the previous documents you've seen for asbestos and fire, and therefore you'll be happy to provide comments and feedback on them.
Thank you, Eric. We'll just mention the 2 rogue references to asbestos as well, that you just need to check on them, okay? All right, but that's just a mention, okay?
Yes,
all right.
No problem.
So open for questions. Linda, did you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, the asbestos references are at 4.1 in both the gas and the electric, and 4.4 in the gas. And I think also, and this is a detail, I think there's a couple of words missing at paragraph 4.7 on both of them. When you talk about referring to legal, it says when all other attempts to gain access, I think it probably should then say have failed or something. We will then blah, blah, blah. So that's just a typo. The more substantive questions I had were whether it's appropriate for a policy like this, and indeed any others that refer to a standardised testing programme, to also pick up the prompt resolution of matters arising from the testing programme. So if you identify issues from testing, is this policy the place to say that you'll do it, obviously, but also to set yourself a time frame for the doing of it and the reporting of it? Or does that sit in procedures underneath the policy, or what?
That they would normally sit in our procedures underneath the policy from the point of view of timescales, and obviously because timescales may differ whether it's gas, electric, or asbestos, or other things, depending on the nature of the risk that's been identified. Some may be immediate, some obviously may be more less time critical, if I can put it that way. So they would fit in with the actual procedures that sit underneath each policy.
Right, but would the policy not say we will do any remedial actions identified within the timeframes set out in the procedures also.
I think that's a perfectly reasonable thing to add into the policy if we feel that that's applicable at this stage.
Yeah, I think it's good practice, isn't it, Linda, to actually set out that you're going to do the follow-ups and how that's going to be laid out so that people know that that is a requirement. You're just not doing the gas safety or electrical safety or asbestos safety or whatever. You're doing it and then you have to also do the follow-ups. I think that's a good thing for the policy and the procedure then to say how that's going to, yeah. Yeah, is that what you mean, Linda? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what I understand, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Asad, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just responding, Linda. Yeah, particularly for electrical testing, we have prescribed urgencies against different codes of repair, so code 1, code 2. So we can certainly, in the electrical policy, reference the standard codes. In the gas one, it's not as prescribed, but we can still reference it.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I think that's a good idea. And I had really just one other general question, which I guess applies to this and indeed other policies, is do you have a process for somebody checking the sort of technical content of the policies, if you like? So somebody who says, that looks great as a policy, but have you remembered that the law changed to reduce this timeline to X from Y or whatever? Somebody who knows these things, really. Because having observed really helpfully the Building Safety Assurance Board, who were looking at the last meeting at precisely these two policies, that they didn't raise any questions about it. Now, it might well have been that they didn't have any questions about it, and that's fine. But it did just make me wonder where the sort of technical review comes, just to make sure that you covered all the bases or help you out and just jog your memory about something that might not be there.
Yes. Well, if I can just give you some comfort on that, all of these policies go via our in-house teams from the point of view gas, electric, asbestos, etc. So they're our first line of defence from the point of view of the technical detail within any policy or procedure. You're absolutely right to raise the issue with then going on to Building Safety and Assurance Board, because they will be part of our second line of defence from the point of view of picking up anything that might have been missed. And I wouldn't want to use yourselves as a third line of defence at this moment in time, but clearly, you know, you again are able to support us with particular issues. But so to come back to your point, I don't write the technical detail in any of these policies. I'm obviously just the holder of the responsibility to get them published, etc. So our in-house teams have written and put in, as I say, the applicable legislation and reference documents for ourselves, because they're the major two differences within any of these policies. So they're putting that level of detail in. They are then obviously going to the Building Safety Assurance Board for review, that second line of defence, before they get published. And obviously then the true third line of defence is when we get things audited later on.
Right. Okay, thank you. And that was it for my questions. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Lee Richards, did you have anything at
I
this
don't
point
have
in
any
time?
questions at this point.
Right, okay. Can I ask some questions then? They're general, really, so I think they apply to all policies, really. And it's something that I think was raised last time. It's about KPIs.
Okay.
And I think you've said that the KPIs would be in the procedure document. Is it good practice, do you think, to have what KPIs will be used in the policy document and how those KPIs are calculated for the performance report, how they're calculated in the procedure report?
I've not generally experienced KPIs going into the policy section side of things, but I mean,
I think the question is it okay to put into the policy, and is it good practice to say what we will measure, not necessarily what the measure will be itself?
Yes.
And I think that's probably a fair point.
Yes.
and worth inclusion in all our policies under a paragraph that says, the performance of this policy will be, these are the things that we would want to see to help us understand whether it's working in the way we
Yes.
want it to work.
Yes.
So I think it's perfectly acceptable, probably is good practice. What we won't be able to do is put a number of measures, because you see the measures, the performance in our performance dashboards at this panel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So clearly there are KPIs against each of those policies, but it's a little bit blunt, because we're trying to achieve 100% compliance on all big six, aren't we, in terms of inspection and reinspection and delivery.
Yes.
And we don't want to deter from that. So we could go as far as saying that we will be fully compliant in terms of the measures that we want. So because I want us to be at 100% on gas safety. I know we have a number of no access currently, but we're trying to work through that, and even trying to get to a position where we might do a bit of predictive analytics to say, well, year on year, which are the households that we can't get access to? Is there a pattern? Is there a demographic? And early indications demonstrate that there is a demographic. It's more, no surprise, it's the younger people, possibly because they're out at work more, possibly because they've not fans of establishment, if I may put it that way. So he's trying to. So you're right, I think, Councillor Smash, for us to have I've been mulling over and reflecting on your earlier comments from, I think, 2 meetings ago as to shouldn't the policy say something about performance?
Yeah. Okay. I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, it'll just be a paragraph that will insert.
Yes, but I think there
which
should
will
be
actually give a
reference
nod
to
the
it,
fact
and
that
then
we are measuring this, and this is how we will, not how, but what we will measure.
Yes, so that there's a thread through all the documents. I think that would be good, because that then leads you from policy procedure to performance, doesn't it? There's a clear,
There's a golden thread there.
there's a clear route there. And also on your monitoring and review, now you've got on the gas, you've got monitoring gas safety and updating risk assessments are an integral part of the control of gas safety. How are you going to do that, and what cycle are you going to do that? Because that says, yes, you're going to monitor gas safety and update risk assessments, but okay, so what assurance is there that you're going to do it?
It's annual. It's an inspection program. So what you're saying is be explicit in the policy on that.
Yeah, I think, is that something, Linda and Councillor Richards, is that something that you think, it should actually be
it does
there?
make sense.
Yeah, and on the electrical, you've got undertake regular electric safety audits, and I just thought you haven't got that on the gas. I just wondered why that was different. Is there specific things that you've got to do in electric but not gas?
No, I think annual gas safety check with electric, we're trying to bring it within a 5-year period and cycle. And you've seen the reports previously that says how many are still to be brought into that 5-year.
Yeah. So again, it's, undertake regular electric gas safety audits. You need your time frame, don't you, that you're aiming for. And also, when we're talking about at 5.5, you're talking about a director within H&N shall be notified. Well, who? That could be any director, couldn't it? I mean,
There's
There's
only
one director.
yeah.
There's only one. It's Parker. Sorry.
Do you know what I mean? Because as
Yes.
I understand it, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, there has to be, according to the white paper, there's possibly going to be an individual person, a named person for compliance, to be visible and accessible to tenants. But is there a named not a named director, or a named
role,
a named role that somebody has to report to? Because a director within H&N, that could be any, Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. We can correct that and make sure that it's the service director for homes and neighbourhoods.
So on your compliance named person, then who would be that compliance named person that would be visible to tenants?
What
That's
role
in
do
the
you
white
think?
paper. Yeah. Have the council thought of that yet?
The named person's likely to be the service director for homes and neighbourhoods.
Right. Okay. But that's not been thought through yet. No.
No, we have to discuss that, and it was a question of whether it should be the strategic director of growth and regeneration or whether it should be the service director homes and neighbourhoods.
Right. Okay. And there's also no control, no information about data handling in your policies. Is that something that you would consider as to how data has to be gathered and your procedure to say how that's to be done?
Well, we do have a data management policy. I suppose this is one of the read across to other areas, because that would obviously be something that would be applicable to almost any walk of our operational life, from the point of view of tenant signing up to a property or anything right the way through. So it hasn't been something we've included in other policies.
Right. So you've nothing to say how data is going to be looked at in respect of your policies. So because you've got a lot of information here that you're collecting across all your policies, aren't you? And there's nothing in any of them yet that says how you're going to be handling that data and everything, or that you are going to be handling that data and it's going to be done in a specific way. I just wondered if you've got anything in your procedures as to how that data would then be collect.
I think I'd want to also be sort of clear on this point, because we can talk about two bits of data or two types of data. One is personal data, which is relevant to the individual, and that obviously we have our data protection policies, etc., which is what I'm referring to from the point of view of subject access requests or any of those kinds of other personal data, relating to an individual. If we're talking about data from the point of view of the kind of compliance data that produces our performance reports, etc., that isn't covered by the same legislation, because that's purely, internal use data, for want of a better phrase, and doesn't identify particular individuals, so isn't covered by the Act. So are we talking both types of data, or?
No, I was talking about your compliance data.
Right.
So I was talking about the compliance data, and as to how that's going to be handled. Yeah. Okay. Could you have a think about it and get back to us as to how that would be done? Yeah.
Yeah, but I would anticipate that data handling to be in the procedure note, in terms of the back end of all the way through the process, how we are making sure that we are recording, managing and validating our data to ensure that we have accurate and reliable reporting to offer the assurance to the appropriate places.
Yeah, and that sentence, that summary.
You like that sentence?
Is not that summary. Yeah, is not in your policy that's your intention.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if that is something that ought to be. Are there any other questions? It's going to be a short meeting. Any other questions, Linda?
So it's just a comment, really, just following on from that conversation, which was really interesting, is that split between personal data and compliance data might get a bit blurred in precisely the example Naz was talking about you looking at the demographics of the properties you can't access. So you've got a batch of no access properties on your compliance data, but it might be quite helpful to drill down into the personal data that sits behind that to understand if that helps target what you can do about it, really. So it might not be that black and white between personal and compliance data, but it just came to mind as that conversation was proceeding.
I think you are right in terms of the linkages and the interdependencies for us to have that know your customer and have a good knowledge of our customer. But the data protection, the data protection or the data management policy guides how we might interrogate the personal data on a tenant to help us inform our compliance work. So they are governed by two separate policies and two sets of rules. But we will use the data to inform each other, if you will. And I think that's not any breaches of data management policies.
And there is that sort of not grey area, if I can put it that way, but that, as you say, that sort of inference between the purely personal data and then the purely compliance data that I think you're right to highlight, because we may well do some analysis using personal data to identify some of the trends that Naz has talked about, to say, is it particularly an age group that we're not getting access to, or et cetera, et cetera. And again, providing we're processing data in that way, which is still largely anonymous, because we're not saying Eric Hughes is in that category, or Cynthia Smith is in that category. It only becomes personal when we actually decide we want to write to Eric Hughes or Cynthia Smith, because obviously then we will get down to that level of personal detail. But from the pure data analysis, we can anonymize data and make sure that we're not processing personal data in a way that will breach the Act in any way. And that's what's contained in our data protection policies.
Okay, are there any more questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to the end of our formal meeting. Thank you for your time today. Members will now move into an informal session. Thank you.